similar to the one that killed the dinosaurs. It happened 5 times in the past 540 million years, but this time around, experts say we may be able to stop it. Michio Kaku is a physics professor at City University of New York and author of the new book, Physics of the Future, that we're going to be looking forward to the new book, of course. All right, Dr. Kaku, getting right to it. So which species would be most at risk?
Well, so far, if you analyze the last few hundred years of life on the Earth, human activity apparently has wiped out 1.4% of all plant and animal species, and it is 100 to 1,000 times faster than normal because of human population, development, pollution, overharvesting. And if you take a look at a zoo, many of the zoo animals that our children love, we may find them going extinct. The tiger, for example, may go extinct. Many of the familiar zoo animals, bears, and realize that 18,000 species are at risk.
And what about climate control? What role does it play?
Yeah, climate change is also involved in this thing. Independent of where climate change comes from, we see that the seasons are changing. Summers are getting longer, winters are getting shorter on average. And we always say that the early bird catches the worm, but that assumes that the worm and the bird are synchronized. Many of these cycles, the natural cycles, are being thrown into disarray, meaning, for example, droughts in China going on right now, perhaps famine in certain areas. So we humans cannot be divorced from what's happening in the natural world.
We can't be divorced. Is there something we can do about it? I guess you said pollution is one thing we can do. But so what happens, Doctor, if there is not this sort of scientific pruning? Would the Earth be overrun with all sorts of creatures?
Well, evolution says survival of the fittest, and so far we humans are among the fittest. But we are also at the top of the food chain, the top of the pyramid, and it wouldn't take much to dislodge us from being at the top of the food chain.
So who could outrank us at that top of that food chain? You know what animals I need to look out for?
Well, in science fiction, of course, the insects take over. But look at something very simple. We are dependent on just a few crops, wheat, rice, and just a few crops, and if a blight were to wipe out these crops, then a huge chunk of humanity would starve to death because we're so dependent on just a few plants and animals for our existence.
So should we expand our menu, so to speak, or is there something else that the Earth provides that we should be looking at?
We should be wary of overharvesting. For example, overharvesting the oceans. We have drag nets, which in principle could drag the entire oceans. That's how efficient our technology is. Also, wheat production we have to worry about because water is the key to wheat production, and there are going to be perhaps water wars in the future.
And are you concerned about that water wars and that we may run out of water?
Well, there will always be water on the Earth. The question is the cost and what it would take to extract it, to desalinate it, to divert it, to irrigate. And so the cost of certain kinds of commodities could start to rise. So just because we're at the top of the food chain doesn't mean that we're invulnerable to what's happening outside where biodiversity is being threatened.
You mentioned, we have to go, but you mentioned insects could overrun the Earth.
Well, that's in science fiction.
Yeah, but the cockroaches, they never seem to go away, Doctor. We got to figure out a way to get rid of them. All right, Dr. Michio Kaku, thank you so much. And your new book we're looking out for is Physics of the Future.
There's a giant asteroid flying towards Earth. Detected by a Russian robotic telescope, it's one of the largest and most dangerous space rocks approaching our planet's orbit. RT's Murad Gaziev looks at the threat from the void.
Humanity's last experience with a large asteroid was painful. Almost 2 years ago, the Chelyabinsk meteor, traveling at 19 kilometers a second, exploded in the skies above Russia. The blast was dozens of times more powerful than an atomic bomb. But that meteor was only 20 or so meters in diameter, weighing about as much as the Eiffel Tower. This new asteroid is an entirely different story. It's 20 times bigger, the size of a village, weighing millions of times more. If this asteroid, for now called 2014 UR116, flew into our atmosphere, it wouldn't just burn up in the air and shatter windows. This would hit the planet's surface, potentially killing millions. But calm for now. It's not yet on a collision course with Earth. The danger is, as it passes near planets and the sun, gravity could alter its path. In fact, the Russian Space Agency, which detected UR116, has satellites watching just for such objects. And it's not only Russia. An American observatory a decade ago detected another similar asteroid. There was a big scare about that, if you remember. Apophis was named after the Egyptian god of evil, and asteroids its size hit Earth on average once in 80,000 years. NASA gave it a thinking about what to do if they confirm a collision course, though don't expect anything quite as dramatic as Bruce Willis leading his team of misfits to save the world.
It's been almost 10 years since little Pluto was demoted from being a planet, but today scientists from the California Institute of Technology have announced that they finally have solid evidence for a planet X, a true ninth planet on the edge of our solar system.
Is believed to be far beyond the orbit of Pluto, roughly the size of Neptune, with a mass 10 times that of Earth.
There are things out there, little icy objects that are orbiting in a funny way, and nobody was quite sure why. It seemed like there might be something with gravity pulling on them, but nobody quite understood. And finally, these scientists that you talked about took a really hard look at it, did simulations, calculations, and they came up with the explanation: it probably is this giant planet.
I think I read somewhere it orbits the sun every 10,000 to 20,000 years.
Right.
Is that why no one has seen it to this point?
No, that's not why. It's because it's so dim. It's so far away that even though it's big, it's very, very dim, and it'll be very tough to spot with a telescope.
I'm also fascinated at the idea that this planet could be so far out there and still our sun be the mass that is keeping it in the gravitational pull of our solar system.
Right, yeah, but no, it's true.
That's incredible. And so there was a thought at one point from scientists that when they thought that there was something beyond Pluto, that it might have been all the massive objects floating in the Kuiper Belt, but it's not.
Right, so all those objects are out there and they have a lot of mass, and originally the scientists said, look, a planet is such a crazy idea, maybe it's the Kuiper Belt itself that's pulling it on itself and making these orbits look funny.
And when we talk about the mass of this planet X, this ninth planet, being 10 times that of Earth, for those who are not scientists, what does that really mean, the mass of a planet versus Earth's mass?
Well, if you could put it on a scale, how much it would weigh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it. And so it's bigger, it's bulkier, it's got more heft, it's got more gravity. It's this huge elephant in the living room, except we didn't know it was there.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that scientists haven't seen it yet because of how far away it is and how dim it is. Is there a way for them to get visual evidence?
Yes, so the biggest telescopes in the world can theoretically see this thing if they're looking in exactly the right place. And with the publication of this new paper today, they are now going to start to look in earnest.
How much further out there is this planet X than the rest of the planets in the solar system? I mean,
so Pluto we think of as the really out at the very edge, the very farthest thing that you could call a planet, even though we don't anymore. And
I'm still supporting Pluto's right to be a planet.
But this thing is 5 times further out than Pluto.
Fascinating. Is there any chance it's not a planet?
There's always. It's very foolish to say no chance because you just don't know what you don't know. But the odds are looking very, very good.
60 billion miles from the sun.
Yep.
Amazing stuff. Michael Lemonick, thank you so much. Fascinating stuff.
Great, thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Dwayne Brown with the Office of Communications, and welcome to NASA headquarters. Today, NASA reveals near-Earth asteroid findings and implications for future research from the agency's Near-Earth Object Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, in short, NEOWISE. Today's information and graphics can be obtained on the web at www.nasa.gov/wise. We will have brief presentations from our presenters, then open it up for questions at our NASA centers and the phone bridge. Before we get started, let me introduce you to today's speakers. First up, Lindley Johnson, NEO Program Executive, NASA Headquarters, Washington. Amy Meinzer, NEOWISE Principal Investigator, NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, Pasadena, California. Tim Spar, Director, Minor Planet Center, Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory, Cambridge, Massachusetts. And Lucy McFadden, Scientist, NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. And with that, I'll toss it to Lindley to start us off.
Thanks, Dwayne. Thank you all for tuning in to hear about our progress with the Near-Earth Object Observation Program. We're here today to provide an update of our understanding of the near-Earth asteroid population and announce achievement of some significant goals in finding our nearest neighbors in the solar system. Over the past 12 years, our work to find near-Earth asteroids has largely been done by several ground-based observatory teams. But in 2010, NASA augmented those efforts by enhancement of the ground processing of the data being returned by the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer.
So one of the characteristics of NEOWISE is that it really was a fairly small telescope in a low Earth orbit. In fact, the telescope would kind of fit under your arm like this, so it's not particularly large. But by virtue of being in space and operating at infrared wavelengths, it's a very powerful telescope, and it turns out to be very good at finding asteroids and comets. Now, if you go to the first animation here, you can see a little representation of what WISE looks like going around the Earth. It's always pointing outward from the Earth, surveying the whole sky. And as the Earth goes around the Sun, this allows the telescope to very quickly and efficiently carry out a survey of the whole sky. And in fact, it was so fast we were able to survey the whole sky twice in infrared wavelengths in only 1 year. And you can see here a little representation of the difference between visible light and the infrared light that WISE was able to see. So this was a very efficient and effective way of surveying the sky. And the original purpose of the mission was actually to study cool stars in very distant galaxies, and it's doing a great job of that. However, it turns out to also be very good at detecting asteroids. This is because it's using infrared light.
First of all, I find it really exciting that scientists continue to find things in the solar system, bodies in orbit around the sun, and objects that are close to our backyard in the near-Earth space. I want to congratulate the team for your successes, and I know from experience that in order to conduct a survey and to locate and discover new bodies from spacecraft missions requires a lot of planning, a lot of ingenuity, huge amounts of computing power, and then hours and hours, months of discussions with colleagues and poring over the data to validate the results.
Thank you. I realize you're focusing on near-Earth asteroids today, but there's been so much talk about the potential for finding a planet X or some sort of large body through the WISE survey. Can you comment on any status on that sort of search, or maybe even reassure people that planet X isn't coming to get them next year?
Yes, this is Amy Meinzer. I'm happy to answer this one. Planet X is not coming to get us. But we are looking to see if there are any other bodies in the outer part of the solar system with the WISE data. This is a very natural project for WISE. And so we're still working on it right now. We've obviously just returned a huge amount of data from the telescope that's going to take us a long time to sort through. But the initial results are very promising. You may have seen earlier results where we've discovered a new class of very cool type of stars with WISE. But the search is still on, and we don't think that there's anything that's hazardous in the outer solar system. We think that this is just a sort of if there is something out there, it would be a large body in a roughly circular orbit.
Our next caller, Denise Chow from space.com. Denise.
So when you say the initial results are very promising, the initial results are very promising. Anything else you wanted to say on that point?
We've actually been able to confirm the discovery of 100 new objects that are these very cool stars called brown dwarfs. And so that's very similar to what people are interested in looking for. So we've actually found some of these that are relatively close to the Earth, but none of these are closer at this point than the nearest star to our solar system. So it's a good start, though.
This was taken in the Montana sky yesterday. Now, to the right, up there at the top right, it looks like that could probably be potentially the Comet 45P Honda. We don't know what these other there's a black one over here. There's like a little black dot over here to the left near the sun. Of course, here's the sun. And right here, what is this? Okay, now there's been several pictures been surfacing of this little black, what looks like a distant planet or something that's been near the sun that's got people concerned. Of course, we know what this is. There's your poisonous chemtrails just happen to be rolling by. And there's a couple of other weird things that's out there. We're going to talk about this. This picture was sent to us by Richard. And Richard's a professional photographer, and he looked up in the sky and seen all these different things happening and said, what is that? And what is this? Of course, some of this could be explained with something to do with the camera, but he is a professional photographer, so he would understand lens flares and those types of things, obviously. There's some unexplained things in this picture in Montana that we need understanding for. Now, if you watch today's live broadcast, we will show this picture fully, and it will be perfectly clear on that screen that we're going to show you during my live broadcast. So don't miss it today. It starts at 12 noon Eastern. Starts at 12 noon Eastern at my website at www.paulbegleyprophecy.com. Come to my website, watch the live broadcast. We'll show you this picture, the full frame of it in clarity, perfectly clear. And maybe you can give us some help in understanding what these things are. I know that this right here is very curious to me. That's very curious to me. But there's a lot out there. Give your life to Jesus Christ. He's coming soon. I tell you one thing I'd love to see is the Lord coming soon. Okay? He told us to keep looking up, folks, for our redemption is drawing nigh. Are you serious? Are you serious? Asteroid! I mean, how close are they going to get, folks? And when are you going to know about it? Only unless I tell you, usually. But we've got an asteroid that's going to be another near-Earth encounter. It's close encounter of a deep space kind. Yes, it is. It's only it's only 10 meters in size, but that's huge. 10 meters, 30 feet, big rock. There's a lot bigger ones, but this thing is going to come by the Earth less than 200,000 miles from the face of the Earth. In other words, closer to the Earth than the moon. Okay, shouldn't hit us. But nobody ever tells us about it, okay? The name of this asteroid is 2017 BX. Now, it's fairly new. They just found it. At least they're giving us a little bit of a head start. It's going to happen Wednesday, January 25th, okay? Wednesday, January 25th, we're going to have this close encounter with an asteroid. But we've already been having quite a bit of activity. Matter of fact, there was 14 fireballs that broke through the Earth's atmosphere last night. So in the middle of we got 7.9 mega earthquakes going on in Papua New Guinea. We got tornadoes tearing through the southern part of America, killing 16 people in Georgia, 4 people in Mississippi the night before. We've got all kinds of different types of storms and radiation and solar flares in the sun. And I'm just saying, folks, it's just we're continuing to see extreme weather conditions. And we may have tornadoes tonight in Florida before it's all said and done. So I need you to stay awake down there in the south. Not only Florida, but maybe even back up in Georgia again. But just the southern states, stay awake. Stay awake, okay? Anyway, I'll talk to you guys about all of this tonight at Sunday Night Live. Starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. Now, we're going to have a powerful program because we will be praying over special needs and special prayer requests that are taking place. And we truly want you to know that God is answering prayer in a mighty way as we pray over these needs. I'm going to cover all of the different events: bus crashes, train derailments, volcanoes, tornadoes, solar flares, asteroids, earthquakes, and a whole lot more. Oh, and Madonna wanting to blow up the White House. What? Come on. Can't we ever get a break? Give your life to Jesus Christ, folks. We're running out of time. Are you serious? Are you serious? Asteroids! Yes, in a few hours, we're going to have a close encounter with an asteroid just newly discovered, and it's asteroid 2017 BX. Now, this thing is going to go scraping by the Earth, even closer than the scientists in the NASA and other observatory satellites anticipated. It will be 0.68 lunar distance. That's about 150,000 miles from the face of the Earth, much closer than the moon. And we didn't even know about this asteroid till 3 days ago. And so I brought this up. Hey, just discovered, here it is, and it's going to go whizzing by in a few hours. Tomorrow, on January 25th, in just a few hours from now, this asteroid is going to come dangerously close to the Earth. Now, the probability of impact is a good chance it's not going to hit us. But when you don't discover an asteroid quick enough, you don't have time to read its speed or distances or its trajectory as well. You have less time to analyze it. We know how big it is. It's 10 meters in diameter, so it's a 30-foot rock. Huge. There's a lot bigger asteroids, but it's not a rock we want to get hit with. This thing hits us, it would be about 30 times more powerful than the one that hit in Russia in February of 2013. And we have no idea where it would land. So we don't want it hitting us. We don't think it will. But this is the kind of thing that all of us got to be aware of. Now, the Bible said there would be, that the stars would fall from heaven like a fig tree would cast its untimely figs when it's shaken of a mighty wind. And we know Jesus said part of the end time signs would also be this: there shall be signs in the sun, which we're at a solar minimum, with a huge hole in the coronal hole that's allowing solar wind streams to flow right toward us, sending CMEs and ultraviolet rays. So these things are happening. Signs in the sun. There shall be signs in the moon and in the stars. Distress of nations with perplexity. The sea, the waves roaring, and men's hearts would fail them for fear, for looking after those things that are coming upon the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Then, here's the good news, then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, he said, look up, lift up your head, for your redemption draweth nigh. I'll be back with more current world events and how they relate to biblical prophecy. We're not going to get hit, I don't think, but it's close. It's close, and we didn't have much time to prepare. Are you saved? Jesus will come faster than this. You'll have no time to prepare, and you'll get no warning. And he's coming soon. Don't be left behind. Are you serious? Are you serious? We have some breaking news coming out of Yemen. The Russian ambassador to the nation of Yemen has just been assassinated after armed gunmen stormed the Russian embassy in Yemen and have shot and killed the Russian ambassador. Now, we just had just a few weeks ago, the Russian ambassador to Turkey was shot in public, giving a speech at the podium at an art display at an art museum in Turkey, in Istanbul. And everybody's seen this. Now, this has happened, folks, just about an hour ago. Ambassador Vladimir Dushkin has been reportedly assassinated in the war-torn country of Yemen. The diplomat was reportedly assassinated in the capital of Sana'a. The assassination was reported by Saudi Arabian news agency. So I'm also getting this from our word on the street, very reliable source, who's right about 90% of the time on unconfirmed reports. And we actually received this information from him first. I did not run with it until at least got a couple confirmations. I have got these confirmations out of the Middle East. Heidi has received those, and including a Twitter account, but at least 2 Saudi Arabian news agencies, and now 3 news agencies out of the United Kingdom. There is some reports that Mr. Dushkin is not dead, but most of them say he was shot and killed and assassinated. The Russian embassy in Yemen has reportedly said no one's been shot, and that's what they're telling NBC News at this point. But again, the Washington Post said that it had not spoken to the duty officer at the embassy in Yemen, and he had denied there had been any attack and said the ambassador was fine. But now, that was before other reports started coming in that yes, he has been shot and killed. Mr. Dushkin was appointed by Russian President Vladimir Putin on August the 16th, 2013, and he's been the ambassador for Russia in Yemen. So word on the street is he was assassinated and killed. And there are Saudi Arabian news agencies reporting that he is dead. We have also news agencies from the UK reporting that he is dead. But the Washington Post is saying that NBC is still saying the word they got from the Russian authorities out of Moscow that he is not dead. So that's where we're at. I am going to give you more on this information at my backup channel. If you go to coming_apocalypse, I'll give you even more of an insight of information we have and keep you updated on this story. So go to my backup channel, if you will, at coming_apocalypse, and that's where all the updates on this story are going to be today. I'm telling you, we're living in the last days, and the Russians are being targeted. The sanctions that Obama put on them, the confiscation of their 2 intelligence compounds, these 35 diplomats that were kicked out of the country. He did an executive order just the other day, and there's several Russian businessmen, their assets are being frozen and stolen, confiscated. Okay, now Russian ambassadors are being shot dead in different parts of the world, especially the Middle East. So, and then the United States has just moved 3,600 U.S. troops into Poland, along with 87 tanks and over 100 and some armored vehicles along the border of Russia. Now, it's getting serious, folks, and we got to see what this really all means. And we're just 6 days away before a brand new president is coming into the United States, the 45th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump, to be inaugurated on Friday. Will he get in? You got Rosie O'Donnell's calling for martial law and a military coup of the government. Are you serious? And there's going to be 700,000 protesters coming to Washington during the inauguration. This is not good, but this is where we're at. We'll keep a close eye on all of this. We're living in the last days. Give your life to Jesus Christ. Go to my backup channel. Subscribe to it, please. I need you to subscribe to it. Protect my backup channel, if you would. Coming_apocalypse.
Truth Unveiled here, and today we're going to be talking about some prophetic signs that are coming up, not just in America, but for the rest of the world. And we're going to be focusing specifically on the Great American Eclipse that's coming up in a few months, and also the 9/23/2017 sign. Now, before we begin, let me preface this video and say, am I saying that the rapture is going to be happening? There's going to be some great big event that happens. Martial law is going to be declared on 9/23/2017 or any time before then? No, I am not saying any of that. We do not know the day or hour when it comes to judgment, but we know we need to be ready at all times. But rather, I'm going to show you how deep this really goes and how prophetic this sign really is. And then come to your own conclusion. This is not about, oh, it's the end of the world and placing dates on when the end of the world is. No, this is not what this is about, but rather to get more educated on exactly what's going on and how deep it really goes. So now that we got that out of the way, this is an actual map that comes from greatamericaneclipse.com/nation, and it lets you know the actual eclipse that'll occur on 8/21/2017. Now, as you can see right here, it'll start off in about the Salem, Oregon area for about 2 minutes at 10:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time and continue all the way onward past Idaho and then past Wyoming. And by the time it reaches 11:45 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, it'll be passing over Wyoming towards Nebraska and then also passing over Kansas, the Kansas City, Missouri area. For about 2 minutes and 40 seconds, the path will then continue on past Missouri into Illinois and then also towards Kentucky, passing through Tennessee and then going a little bit into the Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina area. And then by about 2:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, it'll leave South Carolina and then keep going. Now here's another enlarged map showing you the path of the eclipse. Like we said, you can see some cities here. Like we said, it passes over Salem and begins at Lincoln City, Oregon, and it continues on through Idaho. But what I found interesting about this is that if you keep going on the map, it passes through Casper, Wyoming, then it goes towards Lincoln, Nebraska, and then it also passes through Kansas City. But when you get towards the Illinois area, the point of the longest eclipse right here at 2 minutes and 41 seconds is right here, right under Carbondale, Illinois, right near Cairo, right above Memphis. And we're going to talk more about that and why that's so important. And of course, it continues on through Nashville. And also, if you keep going over here, it continues through Columbia, South Carolina, and then Charleston. And when you look at it all together, it looks like it's making a big slash through America, right through the middle of America. And it's no surprise or coincidence whatsoever, because in 2024, there's supposed to be another eclipse that goes the other way. And we'll be talking more about that later on. Now, before we go more into detail when it comes to the 2024 solar eclipse that's going to pass over America, I just wanted to turn your attention to this too, which is the retrograde motion of Jupiter that occurs exactly 9 months before the 8/21/17 sign. Now we know that this represents the King star right here, and of course this constellation represents the Virgin constellation. We also know that this does happen frequently, that this star does have a retrograde motion, but there's something very interesting and suspicious indeed about this particular one, which starts about at 11/19/2016, so about the middle of November, and we're here in Carbondale, USA. Now if you keep going, you start to see right here, and I'm just going to go really fast right now, you can see that the star is moving in the womb and pretty much stays in the womb there for about a few weeks. Now, normally the King star only has a retrograde motion of about a few months when it comes to being in the Virgin constellation. But as you keep going, as you see, we're now entering the first month of 2017. You see that it's still right here in the womb. And if you keep going, it pretty much stays there. Like I said, we're going to keep it moving all the way. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And it pretty much stays there. Now, it travels a little bit south right here. But once you get to the second month, it's still right there. But by the time we get to the third month, the star pretty much stays in the exact same place, and it pretty much stays stationary right there. And then the fourth month right here, it travels back up just a little bit more. And then the fifth month, where we are about right now, it goes back up to the womb right here, as you can see. And just for video purposes, so you can see how it stays right here. This is the 11th, and then this is where we are right now currently. But as you keep it moving, it still stays in the same place. Now, when you get to the 6th month, it pretty much stays in the same place area right here. But look what happens after a month, after the 6th month. Here we are at 7/25/2017. Now you can see the star is pretty much in the exact same place. It hasn't really moved. But when you keep going though, and when you get to the 8th month, it starts to move down south a little bit more and starts to travel down the womb physically. And this is when the lunar eclipse occurs 2 weeks before the Great American Eclipse. And like I said, we're going to keep going. And now we've actually arrived to when the Great American Eclipse takes place. And then for Carbondale specifically in Illinois, USA, if you go to about 1:19 p.m. or 13:19 on the actual software, if you go about another minute or two, that this is when the actual total solar eclipse takes place indeed. And it stays there for pretty much about 2 minutes and 40 seconds. And then afterwards, of course, the moon then leaves the sun and then it's light again. So then after that, within a 9-month period, Jupiter's retrograde has traveled from here inside of the womb down the womb. But if you keep going just 33 days later to the 9/23/2017 sign, as you can see, Jupiter is still moving even more down and traveling down the womb. And as we keep going more towards 9/23, everything is about to start aligning. And then once we get to 9/23, you see that the woman is clothed with the sun and the moon is under her feet. Now you also see too that the star right here, the J star that represents the Messiah, and the Virgin constellation that represents the Virgin that's spoken of, you see that this star is all the way from here to down here. And you also see how all of these stars align quite perfectly, even the moon under her feet, and also Leo, the lion, which represents the lion of the tribe of Yehuda or Judah, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stars, plus these 3 stars right here for a total of 12 stars. But really, I just wanted to show you the retrograde motion right here and how it's very interesting and suspicious indeed in tying that in to the eclipse. But it's also no surprise because 33 days after that, we see this sign aligning in the sky. Now, there's also something else interesting about this too, because just as the eclipse is about to end here at Charleston, South Carolina, we know 33 days later is the 9/23/2017 sign that's going to appear in the sky. Oh, but that's not the only thing, because this location right here just so happens to be on the 33rd parallel north, which is 33 degrees north of the Earth's equatorial plane. And note how Wikipedia subliminally tells you truth, but you could see the 33rd parallel right here at about the Arkansas-Louisiana border. And if you take a look at that more clearly, here's the line right here of the 33rd parallel north. So if you keep going and keep going and keep going, you get about right here towards southeastern South Carolina. And if we go back to the map, that's exactly where Charleston is, where this eclipse is going to end. Huh? Is that a surprise? And prophetically speaking, we know that the retrograde motion of the king star Jupiter represents the birthing of the Messiah. It represents the birth of a nation, just like the movie Birth of a Nation. Hello, what are they really trying to tell us? And it's no surprise or coincidence either, because the period at when it starts to the period of the Great American Eclipse just so happens to be about 39 weeks and 2 days, and then the 9/23 sign occurring just a few weeks after that. Now, a normal pregnancy takes anywhere from between 37 to 42 weeks, and we see that this is 39 weeks. But then in the spring of 2024, there's going to be yet another total solar eclipse. At least there's scheduled to be another one in North America. And this one's going to start all the way in Mexico and travel all the way up northeast through the United States, and then all the way up into some parts of Canada like Toronto and Montreal. And it's going to keep going from there. Now, rarely does that ever happen, that there's two back-to-back solar eclipses in the same location that just so happen to be total eclipses within a 7-year period, especially covering the entire country of America. What does this really mean? But when you put both of them together, it actually marks a giant X across the United States. And here's a map right here. I'll enlarge it, but this is the 2017 eclipse, and this is the one that's supposed to take place or scheduled in 2024. Of course, we do not know the day or hour, but as you can see, the point of this is that it makes a giant X across the United States. And mind you, this hasn't happened since 1918, so over 99 years since there's been a total solar eclipse over the entire continental USA, and we know that Yahusha warns us to watch out for the signs of the sun, moon, and the stars. Now here's that same map enlarged. As you can see, this is the pathway of the 2017 eclipse, and this is the one of the 2024 one. And you can see it makes a giant X throughout the entire country, but what's interesting is at the very center of it, you find something even more suspicious indeed. And the center point is towards southern Illinois, southeastern Missouri, and also western Kentucky right here. And it just so happens to merge at about Carbondale, Illinois, around the Mississippi River, and also very close to Cairo, Illinois, too. Now here's another enlarged map of southern Illinois specifically, and this one is showing the 2017 eclipse that's going to occur in a few months. As you can see, the areas closest to the blue line is where it's going to be total solar eclipse, and it's going to be total darkness for about 2 minutes and 40 seconds. So very close to Carbondale, but also within these areas there will be total eclipse. But you also see Cairo, Illinois on this map too. Where else have I seen Cairo? Like Cairo, Egypt? Oh yeah, and it just so happens to be near Memphis, Tennessee, along the Mississippi. And by the way, if you look up Carbondale, Illinois just so happens to be known as Little Egypt. What is this really trying to say? Now, I've done a note back in 2015 exposing and showing how America is literally Egypt, not just spiritually, but also literally. And what I've gone and shown is I've done an analysis showing how they both have similarities, and how the Nile River, which is a river that goes all the way through Egypt, as you can see on a map right here, which is known as the cradle of civilization. If you look at it, 30% of Egypt just about is to the east of it, and about 70% is to the west. Well, when you look at America, the Mississippi River pretty much almost goes through the entire country, and about 30% of America is to the east, and 70% is to the west. If you keep going, you start to see other things too, like how the city of Memphis, Egypt just so happens to lie on a river along with Cairo. Where else have we seen that? Because both Cairo, Illinois and Memphis, Tennessee both just so happen to lie on the Mississippi River, the Memphis of America. And did I mention there's also a pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee, just as there is in Memphis, Egypt? You can see the statue right here with the pyramid behind it right in front of the Mississippi. And then I've done more comparisons too when it comes to the Sphinx and the pyramid right here in Egypt, as you can see together. Well, it's the same thing even in Las Vegas, Nevada in America, with an obelisk right next to it. Now, why is it so important to know the similarities between America and Egypt, both spiritually and literally? Because when you know who the real historic people of the scriptures are, notice how I said historic, then you start to understand true prophecy. And when you understand where they are and how they got there, then you understand exactly what Scripture is talking about, and you begin to see America in Scripture and in prophecy, and you also begin to see exactly those who are calling themselves Jews in prophecy too, because last I checked, they're of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but they do lie indeed, and they've been lying, and I've done plenty of videos on this, but you're going to see exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes. And now we're going to be covering a prophecy that no one is talking about when it comes to this sign specifically in this eclipse, and we'll also be talking more about why it's so important to know indeed and how it relates to the end time. Brashath, Genesis chapter 15, verses 13 through 14. And he, Yahuwah, said to Abram, know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But the nation whom they serve I am going to judge, and afterward let them come out with great possessions. Acts chapter 7, verses 6 through 7. And Yahuwah spoke in this way, that his seed would be sojourning in a foreign land, and that they would be enslaved and mistreated 400 years. And the nation to whom they shall be enslaved I shall judge, said Yahuwah, and after that they shall come out and serve me in this place. 2 Esdras chapter 15, verses 10 through 12. Behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt, but I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof. Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that Yahuwah shall bring upon it. Deuteronomy chapter 28, verses 48 through 50, and verse 68. You shall serve your enemies whom Yahuwah sends against you, in hunger, and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in need of all, and he shall put a yoke of iron on your neck until he has destroyed you. Yahuwah brings a nation against you from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flies, a nation whose tongue you shall not understand, a fierce-looking nation, which shows no regard for the elderly, nor show favor to the young. Verse 68. And Yahuwah shall bring you back to Egypt in ships, by a way of which I said to you, you are never to see it again. And there you shall be sold to your enemies as male and female slaves, but no one to buy. Now that we've just identified where America fits in scripture and in prophecy, now we're going to see exactly how it all fits historically speaking. Because yes, the scriptures is a history book. It is not a religious text about Christian people or Jewish people. And just as we've identified historically speaking, notice how I said historically speaking, we see who it's about. Now we also see when the so-called slaves first arrived in America. And according to BET, they arrived as of 8/20/1619. Now keep that year in mind. Now notice how when it comes to the 2017 eclipse that's going to take place on 8/21/2017, there's also going to be a partial lunar eclipse that takes place exactly 2 weeks or 14 days prior on 8/7/2017. And then of course 2 weeks later will be the actual solar eclipse that takes place in America to its entirety. Now that's interesting because does something else take place that's very similar to this in 1619? Oh yes indeed, because on 6/27/1619, so the very beginning of the summer of 1619 is when a partial lunar eclipse occurred back during this time, as you can see right here, and I'll be sure to leave this in the description box below so you could take a look at it on your own time and see the parallels between this. But what's interesting about this is that followed by 2 weeks, there is a total solar eclipse on 7/11/1619. And can you guess where that solar eclipse is? Yes, that solar eclipse occurred right here in Africa, as you can see, right around the same time that the transatlantic slave trade was booming and around the same exact time that slavery began in America, thereby commencing the 400-year prophecy. Is that a surprise or a coincidence whatsoever? What does this really mean? But as you can see right here, it says that the instant of greatest eclipse takes place on 7/11/1619 at about approximately 10:30 a.m. Now it's interesting because the eclipse in America starts around this exact same time in the morning. Note too how the same solar eclipse that occurred all throughout Africa, as you can see in regions known today, of course, as Cameroon, Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, the Republic of the Congo, and then the Democratic Republic of the Congo right here, and it extended all the way down to Tanzania and Mozambique. Now, if you keep reading here, it says that 7/11/1619, the total solar eclipse, is an exceptionally long total eclipse with the duration at greatest eclipse of about 6 minutes and 41 seconds. And we know that the one in America is supposed to be about 7 minutes long too total. Now here's an enlarged map so you can see the parallels and so that you can see exactly what time it really is for America, or should I say Egypt, because exactly around this time is when the first so-called slaves were taken in ships and brought to the New World, known as America specifically, or should I say Egypt, but it gets even deeper than this. Because when you look at the duration, so when you look at the start of the actual eclipse in Africa that occurred on 7/11/1619, all the way up until when slavery began in America at Jamestown back on 8/20/1619, you see that the period of this is about 40 days right here. And you can take a look at it. I'll be sure to leave it in the description box below. But that's not all, because it just so happens that if you look at the duration between this next upcoming eclipse on 8/21/2017 in America, if you go 40 days later and include the end date duration, you get a date at about 9/29/2017. That's interesting because that's around the same time as what? The Day of Atonement. And also note how you have here too the 40 days right here, 40 days, which represents in scripture, of course, trials and tribulation and testing indeed. Now, am I saying anything's going to happen within that period? Am I saying anything big, huge, or ginormous is going to happen? No, I am not. We need to be ready at all times for the coming of Yahusha. We need to be ready for judgment at all times because no one knows the day or hour but our Father Yahuwah. But what this is showing you the similarities and how the start and finish of what America, because we know that judgment is even at the door. And it's also interesting because here, according to Encyclopedia Virginia, the ship that arrived in 1619 to Jamestown, Virginia, just so happened to be called White Lion, where they were sold again likely into slavery. And notice how this website says likely into slavery. It also says the historians have long believed that these so-called Africans to have come to Virginia from the Caribbean, but Spanish records suggest that they had been captured in a Portuguese or Spanish-controlled area of where? West Central Africa, the same place where the eclipse occurred just 40 days sooner on 7/11/1619. And the reason I brought up the White Lion slave ship reference, because when you look at when slavery began in America in 1619, and I have the date right here as of 8/20/1619, you see exactly where the sun was in the Leo, the Lion constellation. And we know which tribe was sold into slavery specifically, Yahuda or Judah, the lion of the tribe of Yahuda, Judah. Is it all starting to make sense now? Just how like 398 years and a day later, we'll see on 8/21/2017, the same thing. The sun and the moon will be in the Leo Lion constellation over America, where much of the descendants of the lion of the tribe of Yahuda, Judah, are even to this day as we speak. And then just so that you also know and were aware, there was also known as the Ring of Fire solar eclipse that occurred back in the second month, so about a few months ago. It occurred on 2/26/2017 in South America and Africa. So in conclusion, we know that during the Great American Eclipse, there will be a slash literally made right over America, over Egyptian-influenced areas such as Cairo, Carbondale, also known as Little Egypt, the Mississippi River, and right above Memphis, Tennessee, places that we've heard of in Egypt. We also know that it marks an X with the 2024 total solar eclipse. And we also know how there's a lunar eclipse 2 weeks prior to this on 8/7/2017. And by the way, the Great American Eclipse marks 398 years and 1 day after slavery began in America, very reminiscent to the eclipses that we went over in 1619, with the lunar eclipse preceding the solar eclipse in Africa back in 7/11/1619, with slavery only beginning 40 days later. And just like this event here, 40 days after the Great American Eclipse, we land right at Day of Atonement, which scripturally speaking represents deliverance. So we see that this sign in the sky represents the end of America, and that's why Yahuwah gives us signs to warn us and to sound the alarm so we can see exactly what time it is, just like the 1619 eclipse in Africa represented the beginning of captivity and the beginning of America as a nation. Well, guess what? The Great American Eclipse, along with the 923 sign, represents the end of America, and we know that Yahuwah, Yahusha, is the beginning and the end, and we know that it represents the coming judgment to come. Of course, we do not know when, we do not know the day or hour, but we know that we must remain ready and be ready at all times. We must always be vigilant, diligent, sober, because we know not the day or hour. We know that it could occur in 3 months from now, 3 weeks from now, 3 years from now, or 3 decades from now. But regardless, we need to remain ready and we need to remain protected and sealed in Yahuwah and Yahusha. Please seek Yahuwah and his true son Yahusha, and if you would like to learn more, please take a look at the description box below. But this is Truth Unveiled here, keeping you updated as always, and saying as always, Shalom.